All right. Well, hello and welcome. My name is Betsy. I'm going to show you how to draw Princess Anna today. We're practicing looking at lines and looking for clues to see where to draw these lines and how to draw them. So let's go ahead and start with Anna's nose. And let's take a look at this line that goes pretty much straight down and then just makes that little curve at the end. I'll zoom in even closer so you can see it better. So it's not exactly straight. We've got just a slight curve, right? But it goes pretty much straight down and then just turns up a little bit right at the end of her nose. So I'm going to go ahead and try to copy that as best I can.
Which way are we going to have our paper?
You can have it tall or sideways. I have mine sideways like this just because it fits on the camera a little easier. But you can do it this way if you want. I like to give myself a couple of lines so that I have choices, and then I come back in with my eraser and I just get rid of the ones that I don't like. Oh, and if I could find my eraser, let's use this one. Then the bottom of her nose, little tiny curve, very, very small in comparison to this big line that we just drew. Remember to try to draw lightly, just in case you want to change something. It's easier to erase the lines if they're drawn lightly. I'm going to zoom in again so we can see this detail on her nose. We already drew this line and we drew that line. Now we have to give her a little dot for a nostril so that she can breathe, and that tiny little line on the side of her nose. I'll try to get them both on the camera. Let's see if I can. Tiny little dot and a little line for the side of her nose. Already I think I made her nose a little short, so I'm going to move that line back a little bit. She has very thin lips, so we're just going to make this very small curve for her top lip. And how far back does that top lip go? It goes past her nose for sure. We'll have a little bit better idea once we draw her eyes in there, but I can see that if there's the edge of her nose, her mouth goes farther to the left. And she's not smiling in this picture, but if you want to make her smile, of course you can do that. And very lightly, I'll draw the line for the top of her lip. And when we look at her bottom lip, we can see that it's shorter than the top lip. It doesn't come out all the way here and make it even, right? It's a little bit shorter and a little bit thicker. And it has the shape a little bit of a raindrop where it's pointy on one side and a little bit rounder on the other. So let's see if we can do that. We'll make a lip that's shorter than the top one. Pointy at the corner of the mouth and a little rounder at the front of the mouth. Then for her chin, what do we see for the chin? We've got a little tiny line that goes backward and then a longer line that's also going a little bit backwards. So I'll make a tiny, tiny, tiny little line. Oh, there's Callista. Let's let her in. Tiny, tiny, tiny little line. A little bit bigger line. And I'm just looking at this part right here where it's going into her throat. We're not going to do this line yet. We're just going to work on this part. And then we'll make this almost straight line for her neck going down. And I'm going to pause right there. Callista just got here, so I'm sure she wants to catch up. But this is a good time to take a look at your drawing, see if there's anything you think you can change or make better and make closer to what you see on this picture. I can see that her nostril is closer to the line of her nose than I drew. I left a lot of space between her nostril and the tip of her nose. Is that enough, Callista? I think that's about the whole picture that we're going to be drawing today. So I'm going to go ahead and move that nostril closer. Which means I'll have to move that line on the edge of the nose. Great, I'll go ahead and zoom back in just so you can see the detail of Anna's face. Try to focus there. What's some other things I might be able to improve upon? I think maybe her nose is a little bit flatter on the tip and I made mine kind of pointy. Good thing I drew lightly. I can erase it easily. Give her a little bit of a flatter tip. This is why it's good to have really sharp pencils for these little tiny details. Still think it's a little bit too sharp. I'll probably end up making it too round, but oh well, I'm trying. Then let's go ahead and start drawing in her eye. How are we going to know where to put her eye? Well, we can see that the corner of her mouth is in front of her eye when we go straight up from that. So if I go straight up from the corner of her mouth, very, very lightly. I'm going to erase this later. I know that that's where her eye is going to be on her head. It's going to be the front of her eyeball there. We can also see that, remember when we were drawing this line, it went straight for a while and then it started curving. Right where it starts to curve, that's where the bottom of her eye is, isn't it? It goes pretty much straight down, and as soon as it starts curving, that's where that bottom eyelid is. So I'm going to put that bottom eyelid right where that straight line changes angle. And then for the top one, I'll just give my best guess, because I can always change it later. That one doesn't have as many clues that we can look at. And she's got great big thick eyelashes. So we're going to need to make a line that makes a little point right there so that we can draw on these eyelashes. My pencil's not sharp enough. I want to get a better point there. I should get a mechanical pencil for these tiny little parts. And then we'll take a look at her actual iris and pupil. So right here, I can see that there's a little bit of space between the bottom of her pupil and the bottom eyelid. So I know that my oval won't go all the way to the bottom. It'll only go to about there. And then I can see it goes all the way and touches the top. So I can stick in a very, very, very skinny oval right like that. And if you want to color in her pupil, of course, you can color in her pupil and leave just a skinny stripe for her iris. The part you color when you're describing somebody's eyes. If they have blue eyes or green eyes or brown eyes or hazel eyes, that's the part you color in, right? And then her eyebrow. One really tricky thing with drawing eyebrows in a sideways view is that we tend to draw them too long. So I want to see how this eyebrow is almost connected, or could be connected, to her bottom eyelid. It doesn't go all the way back here and past her eye, right? It's not that long. So we're going to make sure that, oops, that one doesn't have an eraser. We're going to make sure that the eyebrow kind of connects to this bottom eyelid. And that's where I'm going to start the end of that eyebrow. Come to the front. I think I drew her neck a little too close too. Let me move that off a little bit. Next, let's give her some hair. And of course you can use the reactions if I'm going too fast or too slow. We've got a slower and faster down here. At least that's what it shows on my screen. Don't be afraid to tell me to pause a little bit so you can catch up. So for her hair, we've got this braided section. We've got this part getting pulled down. We've got this part free flowing. We've got bangs. We've got piece flowing back, all kinds of pieces of hair. But we're going to start with one that has some clues that we can follow. So let's start with the ones that are very close to her eyebrow. This one right here that touches her eyebrow and goes above her forehead. Since we've already drawn her eyebrow, actually I did my eyebrow a little surprised looking, didn't I? Let's flatten that out a little bit. That line that touches the eyebrow goes above her forehead. You can start sketching that in. And of course, you can just do it lightly if you think you might change it later. I tend to change my drawings a lot as I go because I just keep seeing different things that I didn't notice before. And what does that line do at the end? A little piece of hair coming forward, almost touching that eyebrow again. And there's this tiny little peekaboo line of the bangs that go out to the other side, that go right from that spike we just drew right to her forehead. Then her hair is going to go diagonally up to the left, that top of her hair right there. We're going to ignore these little flyaway hairs for the moment, and we're just going to look at that line that's going back and then curving around her head. Just sketching lightly, loosely. Get that general shape. We'll make it cleaner later. Get our definite lines later. You can try to use your X-ray vision and think if this line kept going, would it connect back up to her chin? Sometimes that makes it easier to draw the shape if you can see a line that's not really there, but that could help you to connect up those shapes. And then of course you just erase it when you don't need it anymore. And let's go ahead and put in her jawline. Her jawline right here. We'll look at some clues. It almost touches this line here, but not. There's a little space. And how far does it go up? If we drew a line sideways, pretty much to the top of her nose. If I go to the top of the nose backwards very lightly, sometimes you need a ruler to do a straight line. Coming forward, almost touching, but not. And that's where her ear, just the bottom of her ear, is going to connect. So we can see just her earlobe. rest will be covered by hair a little bit later here. We can go ahead and put in this big line that covers the top of her ear and just about touches the part of her hair that we've already drawn. So that's lucky that we've got that marker for us. I have to move mine down a little bit so it doesn't make a tangent. And there's this little triangle of hair that hangs down right in front of her ears, or her one ear since she's looking sideways. And from her ear, we have another line, the back of her neck, which is swooping down to the point of her shoulder. So right from that ear, I'm going to come down. If your neck ends up too thick, like mine looks a little too thick too, then that means we got to figure out where we can change it so that it won't be too thick. I can either move the front line, but then I think her face might get too far forward, or I can move her ear a little bit more forward. A lot of times when you start drawing, you think, oh, I messed up. You crumple it up, you throw it away. But you can keep working at it. You can look, and it's almost like those games where you look at two different pictures and try to see the differences. So I look at my picture, look at mine, look at the picture, look at mine. What's the difference? What's the difference? And then see if you can make your lines match by spotting those differences. That's looking a little better. I'm going to pause right there. I know I changed a lot of lines, so I don't want to go too fast. And let's work a little bit on her braid right here. It just has a couple of overlapping lines that go in front of one another. So let me erase this back part of her head. I don't actually need that. There's that line coming over her ear, and then we need one more line that's going to be this hair flying out so that we can see the bottom of the braid here. Oops, let me try to get both of them on the camera there. Maybe I'll back up a little bit. I'm looking at this line right here. Big bump, little bump. And then right out of that line we just drew, right from that bump there, we're going to make the back of the braid. Just a little curvy line like that, so easy. I'm going to pause right there. I know drawing hair is tricky. There's lots of little lines, lots of different relationships. If you're ready to draw the next line, you'll be looking at this one right here. I'm just going to wait a little bit more so I don't go too fast. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and draw that one that I just pointed out, this little bump right here. Try to get a little closer so it's easier to see. I want it to overlap this one. So I'm crossing it and then come into a curve like that. Then we'll have another one. This is almost like drawing little mountains. And have another one come right out of that line and make a bump. And one more time. We have a little bit of the same thing happening in the back of her hair. So I've got one big bump here, and then there's the one that came from the top of her head. So right from the back of the braids here, I'll go big curve, overlapping into her hair there. I can start darkening the lines that I know I want to keep. And then we can go ahead and draw these hairs that are being blown back in the wind. We've got one little guy up front here, or one little girl. It is flying backwards there. And then the bigger one. I'll go ahead and pause right there for a moment. Feel free to sharpen your pencils. Get a refill on water. We'll draw all these other little lines if we have time, but let's make sure we get the big shapes first. So I'm going to back out some more, and she's got this long traveling cloak that comes right off of her shoulder line. So I already started that shoulder line a little bit there. I'm going to make that sweep down and backwards. It might go right off the paper depending on where you started your drawing. Oops, let me show both of them there. And then there's a fold of cloth that comes off of there like that. So I need to start way back up here and then take a different path along my paper and make a second line right there. And let's go ahead and draw a little bit more of her hair. We already have this little piece, so now we can see there's a big S curve. We call them an S curve when it curves one way and then changes direction and goes the other way, just like the letter S. So I'm going to make a big bump. And then curve it the other way. You can see I go back and forth over my lines, giving myself lots of choices, lots of options. Then I can come back and erase out the ones I don't like. Keep my favorite. And we're going to come back with another curve, just a little one. And we've got another big S curve that's going to happen. So actually I'm going to start way up here where it starts, way above her shoulder. So then we're going to go swooping back and try to touch that line. So here, let's give myself a starting point near her shoulder. And I want to make it to over here. There's my start, there's my finish, and I don't want to just go straight. I want to make it curve. Go a little bit closer to her shoulder. After that, then what happens? We kind of go straight down and then end in another point of hair. I'll pause there in case it's getting too fast. If you're waiting for the next step, you can try drawing in some of these interior hairlines while you're waiting. We'll be doing the same thing again, actually. We've got a line that starts above her shoulder, comes down in an S, but it just ends a little sooner. It's a little shorter than the one we just drew. So if I give myself a starting point, it's going to be above her shoulder. Ooh, getting kind of squishy there. I'm going to move my line. There's my starting point. I know it's going to be shorter than this one, so that'll be my ending point. And I want to make a big S curve to connect the two. Lots of lines, light and loose. And then I can erase the ones that I don't want. Nice big smooth curve to the side of her shoulder there. You can give yourself a starting and ending point if you want. And go, okay, I want it on the side of her shoulder there. There's one point. The other one has to connect to this line here. Big curve. And if you have any room, you might be able to fit this one little curving piece of hair right here. Then for the front part of her cloak, we have her collar that starts pretty much in the middle of her neck and comes forward and then goes down. That line right there. Let's go ahead and come forward across her neck. Go back down. Then what does it do? It goes and follows her torso forward and curves back. And just like the back of the cloak that had that other line, this one has another line too. So I'm going to come back up here and make another line. You can see the shape gets a little wider at the bottom and it's narrow at the top. So my lines need to get farther away by the time we get down to here. Farther away from one another. Then we have her bodice line that connects to her neck and comes forward and goes back in a reverse curve right there. So we can bring this forward just like the cloak. And then we'll curve back. And it looks like she's wearing some kind of necklace or brooch. I don't remember what it was in the movie, but there's a little oval that's right on her bodice here. Squish it in there. And it's really difficult to see, but there's the collar of her dress that curves down right into that oval. And this skinny, skinny, skinny little shape right here, this tiny little rectangle, that's the other side of her dress. Other side of the collar. And then we have a couple of horizontal lines that are separating the colors of her dress. So there's one underneath that oval. There's another one down here, actually a couple of them that look like some kind of belt or sash. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. Make sure to take a look and see if these stripes are all even or if one's bigger than another. Look for clues. I also picked up on a clue that I must have drawn this line too curvy because my bottom belt stripe is really long and in the picture it's only short. So this line should actually come down a little bit more like this so that this one's short. See, every time you notice something new, just change it. That's what erasers are for. And we have a few more lines over here that show the other side of her cloak because we had these lines over here for her cloak. So now we need some on the other side. So those are just going to come right out of her torso. And then there's a slit in this cloak so that her arm can come through. And where am I going to find any clues to tell me where to draw this? Well, if I go straight down from her neck, it's pretty much on the same line. So if I go straight down from her neck, I think the top of that shape of this like triangle, whoops, is going to be right on that line. This is her arm, and that's the back of her arm, making this other little triangle shape here. If you still have lots of paper that's below this part of the drawing, you can just draw a line and say, yep, that's the bottom of my picture, and then you just erase anything that goes below that line. We still have a few minutes left, so let's go ahead and try to do this design that's on her bodice. Let me zoom in real close here so we can see what's going on. And I might take my mechanical pencil and kind of darken in these shapes so that we can see. These are like little chevrons, little arrows pointing upward. There's a diamond on the bottom. There's a little trapezoid. Oops. Pressed too hard on my pencil and my lead went flying. And then another little triangle right there. Just an interesting little pattern. Of course, you can make up your own pattern too if you would rather do hearts or stars or something else. I'm going to start at the top of my drawing and just make that little triangle first. Then I'll make the shape underneath that. And this little trapezoid guy. And a couple of those chevrons or little arrows pointing up. And the last one here, just like a little sideways diamond, or actually it's only half a diamond. Half a diamond is a triangle. So there's a little triangle at the bottom there. Just about 5 more minutes for you to finish up your drawing on your own. We didn't get to everything, did we? We didn't do freckles. There's a little line right here on her collar. There's more lines in her hair. So for the next 5 minutes, actually I'll just zoom in on the picture. For the next 5 minutes, you can add whatever lines you like that I didn't get to yet.